Why is the US so big? Have you ever looked at a map and wondered, why is the United States so massive? Why does this one nation stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific, swallowing up mountains, deserts, forests, and cities across more than 3.8 million square miles? It didn't start that way. In fact, the US began as a fragile strip of 13 colonies hugging the East Coast. So what happened? How did it become the giant we know today? Was it luck, destiny, ruthless ambition, or something else entirely? The story begins in 1776. 13 British colonies declared independence from the British Empire. At that time, the United States was a tiny sliver of land clinging to the Atlantic Ocean. But from the very beginning, the dream wasn't just freedom, it was expansion. The founding fathers believed in a concept that would soon dominate American thinking: manifest destiny. The belief that the United States was destined to expand across the entire continent from sea to shining sea. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made a deal that would change everything. France, under Napoleon Bonaparte, was in desperate need of money for war. Jefferson seized the moment and bought the Louisiana Territory, a staggering 828,000 square miles of land, for just $15 million. That's roughly 4 cents an acre. This doubled the size of the young nation overnight. Next came Florida. Spain was losing its grip on its empire, and the US had its eyes set on the Sunshine State. After some pressure and military action led by Andrew Jackson, Spain agreed to hand over Florida in 1819 through the Adams-Onis Treaty. The US paid nothing directly for the land, but agreed to forgive Spanish debts. Now things started to get heated. In 1836, Texas declared independence from Mexico. 9 years later, the United States annexed Texas, infuriating Mexico and triggering the Mexican-American War. The war ended in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The United States emerged victorious, and Mexico was forced to give up a colossal amount of territory. This included present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. In just a few years, the United States expanded again, this time by over 500,000 square miles. Meanwhile, the United States and Britain were both laying claim to the Oregon territories, the lush region of the Pacific Northwest. Rather than go to war again, they struck a deal in 1846. The land was peacefully divided along the 49th parallel, adding modern-day Oregon, Washington, and parts of Idaho to the United States. But the United States still wasn't done. In 1853, the United States purchased a small strip of land from Mexico for $10 million, known as the Gadsden Purchase. This land in southern Arizona and New Mexico was needed to build a southern railroad route to the Pacific. In 1867, the United States made another bold move, buying Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. At the time, critics mocked the deal, calling it Seward's folly after Secretary of State William H. Seward. But Alaska turned out to be rich in resources, oil, gold, and more. It added over 586,000 square miles to the US map. Russia still regrets this decision till today. Then came the islands. In 1898, the United States annexed Hawaii, once a sovereign kingdom. This move was largely driven by strategic military interests and growing influence in the Pacific. Around the same time, the US acquired Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines after the Spanish-American War, marking its transition into a global empire. But all this expansion came at a cost. Native American tribes were displaced, entire cultures were destroyed, and millions of people were affected by the relentless drive to expand. The story of how the United States became so big is not just one of opportunity. It's one of conquest, compromise, and controversy. So the next time you look at a map, remember, those borders weren't always there. They were drawn through war, negotiation, and vision. The United States didn't just become big, it fought, bought, and believed its way to greatness. And that's what makes its history so endlessly fascinating.